Hello, 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 and welcome to another edition of Talent Talks.
Ladies and gentlemen, what would all of you like more of? Quality, quality, quality.
Go back, but they're also starting to, invest and innovate and grow.
That's where we should really be focusing instead of the bright and shiny.
Hello, 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 and welcome to another edition of Talent Talks. Today is especially awesome because I get to have a couple of guests on that are partners and customers, and we have something incredibly awesome to talk to you about. So we're talking today about a white paper created by Wonolo with the help of Joveo and, of course, our partners at talent.com. If you just want to check out the description below while I am giving you a brief intro of what we're going to talk about today, you will be so glad that you downloaded it and are looking at it while we're talking, because the data is something that is super actionable that you can take to your planning sessions, to your leadership teams, and really makes a difference if you are someone currently trying to hire warehouse workers. So a little bit about the white paper before we get into our guests and some introductions and a really healthy dialogue. Why the white paper? Because we have seen a 475% rise in demand for warehouse workers even before the holiday season started. So Joveo analyzed thousands of daily job postings from major retailers, e-commerce companies, staffing agencies, all in the US between October of 2019 and November of 2020 to look at the CPA and CPC data. And then our partners at talent.com analyzed hundreds of thousands of job postings from January 2020 through October 2020 from more than 38,000 companies who were recruiting warehouse workers to get the job inventory data. And then our partners at Wonolo took all of that and turned it into this lovely white paper that I'm sure you have already downloaded by now. So before we get into a discussion about warehouse workers and the demand, I wanted to quickly invite my guests to introduce themselves. And Monica, we'll start with you. And would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and also about Wonolo and what you guys do?
Sure, happy to. Hi, everybody. My name is Monica Plaza. I am the Vice President of Strategy at Wonolo, which is an acronym of ISH, that stands for Work Now Locally. So we're an on-demand staffing marketplace platform, a tech-forward marketplace, where basically, in a nutshell, we connect businesses nationwide that have temporary staffing needs, either episodic or longer term. Those businesses we call requesters in our marketplace, with workers, which we call Wonoloers, who can meet those needs and meet them quickly and effectively. So basically, requesters post jobs in our marketplace. We have an app that Wonoloers use. Jobs get posted there. They see them. They can accept them. And we basically streamline through technology the beginning to end process of finding workers all the way through checking into a job, payment, etc. So it is a tech-forward sort of disruption of the staffing industry.
That's awesome. That's incredible. Rob, talk a little bit about talent and what you do there.
Sure thing. Yeah. Hi, I'm Robert Boersma. I'm the VP of Operations at talent.com. Talent.com is, our mission really is to connect the world to work. That's what we say often. It's a platform that aims to connect job seekers with employers and vice versa. So really our aim is to provide meaningful tools for job search for people looking for work. Not just job search, whether that's a tax or a salary tool to help you calculate your next move, a resume creator, or really any of the variety of different tools that we currently have and are working on launching right now in order to help basically connect the world to work and increase economic opportunity for humanity. And that's what our goal is.
That's awesome. And you are also, just as a company, really good guests. I've had a few folks on over time, so I appreciate your vast amount of information and also you're willing to partner. So again, good friends here, all a casual conversation. So this white paper that I'm sure everybody has downloaded from the description, it really talks about how much pressure there is on hiring warehouse workers. So I'm just going to start with, is this a real thing? Is this something that we should really be aware of? Monica, let's start with you. What's your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the competition is for warehouse workers is fierce, and it's something that we see both anecdotally, just being out there in the industry, but also in all the numbers, which is why this white paper is coming at a great time, because we see this reflected in, as you mentioned, the 475% increase in advanced job postings in the categories, as the white paper shows in the CPA and CPC data. We see it just in anecdotally when we speak to the users of our platform on both sides of the marketplace. It's just times are changing, and we see it we see it very clearly in the competition, and a lot of for us it's a daily battle. We are constantly looking for workers in the categories that our customers are posting in, and it's just getting more expensive and more challenging to basically be able to find these users.
It's interesting. You mentioned the cost per applicant, right? And again, report, but when we look at the CPA data for warehouse jobs from November of 2020, it's up 366% since June, right? And since February, just before COVID started and was like a pandemic, the CPA is almost sevenfold. I mean, I think that really, so from my perspective, and then Rob, I'm going to pitch it to you, right? But from my perspective, it is really illustrative of taking things out of the store and really delivering them to the door, right? Somebody has to fulfill that. Rob, what's your take on that?
Yeah, no, I think it's not only for those of us who work in the industry of recruitment, digital recruitment, closer to the staffing, we see it and live and breathe it every day. But I think personally, people are living and breathing that every day and see their own increased demand in using these products and this type of service, which is to the door delivery. Speaking personally, I can tell you my consumption of using the efforts of these type of workers and companies has increased substantially since the start of this whole thing. And to be honest, these are probably habits that are going to stick around, that we'll see sticking around into the future, that these are now kind of ingrained habits in the way that people are changing their purchasing habits. So I would agree with that totally. And in terms of the CPA increasing, that's something that we're wrangling with on a consistent basis. Obviously, our job is to go out and find job seeker traffic, to find where these people are looking for jobs online, to try and target them and get in front of them with the job opportunities that employers who sponsor jobs through our website are trying to attract talent to. So we see that challenge on firsthand when we're trying to advertise, is that it's becoming harder to reach these people. There's increased demand. I think it all adds up that it's a more competitive market. Supply and demand kicks in, and it's going to become more expensive to attract that profile.
Okay, so I call these neighbor conversations. It's the conversation I have with my neighbor when she thinks that I hire people, right? Like I work in personnel. And so we were sort of talking about this because I was saying it's hard to find some job seekers for some jobs. And she says, well, there's all these unemployed people, right? Like, why don't everybody wants a job. And so let's just spend a minute on the reality of this, right? Like, this is a very specific role where you're going to be in contact with other people. How do you think safety comes into play here? Monica, thoughts on that?
It absolutely does come into play, and we've seen it, like I said, both anecdotally and within our data. We work very closely with our customer base to just ensure that the users of our platform who are going to these jobs feel safe, and that we could do everything we can to educate both sides of the marketplace on safety protocols and proper communication between the two. But absolutely, we did a survey, and apologies, I don't have the data in front of me on that particular survey, but last year, early on in the pandemic, we did a survey of our users to understand how many were waiting to return to work, to start accepting jobs again. And there was a good portion of individuals who, regardless of their employment status, were waiting. We're not comfortable going into an entirely new environment as a temp, to waiting until they felt a little bit safer. So we do see that the competition has to do with the dynamics in e-commerce, of course, as Rob mentioned, but the pandemic definitely plays a role as well.
Yeah, if I could jump in on the safety aspect as well, one of the things that we've noticed is that there's an increased demand across a wider variety of companies to start engaging in hiring warehouse roles, and potentially a lot of companies and businesses who have not had those type of employees in that volume as they were required to now. And I think that's where the safety aspect becomes especially important, because the big names, big shipping companies, the Amazons, the FedEx, they have experience hiring in volume and managing those types of facilities. Now, that's not to say that they have their own challenges, but I think the companies that need to be really conscious of this are the ones who are starting on this journey right now, who have actually pivoted their business and are creating a lot more of an online presence, and therefore needing to fulfill a lot more orders through these types of services. And that's where they're new into the industry, so to speak, on the warehouse side of things, and need to be extra conscious on the safety side.
It's really interesting. As you were saying that, one of the things that our audience oftentimes is tasked with is like the tactics of this, right? Like, so what are your thoughts on putting some of those safety protocols and best practices in job descriptions? Is that something that could be an effective tactic for our listeners? Is it something that it's not a thumbs down, I guess, thumbs up from both of you?
Yeah, I don't think anybody saw provided hand sanitizer as a great job perk a year ago, but sure is now.
Right? It's very, very true. And so, like, I hear you, Rob, and I've said a lot lately, especially as the vaccination's rolling out, right? Like, it's just for now, or like, like, who would have thought, a year ago, this is where we're at. So I'm going to ask you guys, as we sort of start to wrap up our conversation today, I'm going to ask you to look into your crystal ball, right? With the vaccination coming out and things potentially shifting a little bit, do you see, and you kind of touched on a little bit, but how do we see this pivoting back to the storefront, or do we see it sort of being a hybrid? Rob, I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, for sure. So I think there's going to be some sustained demand regardless on increased shipping demands. It's become part of people's buying habits. I can tell you personally, for example, having things like groceries or meals delivered has now become reasonably ingrained in the way that I operate personally. And so that's not a unique experience. People are going to have shifted their buying habits. Now, of course, things are going to shift back. So as far as adapting your strategy in the future from a business perspective for recruitment purposes, my best advice would be to take the learnings that you've had over the last number of months and try and apply those in a future-proof way. So bringing more of your own employer brand into your post, bringing in your culture, and really building out job branding in a sense where in a tight market, regardless of whether that is your warehouse positions or package handlers, or even if that demand shifts in the future to other aspects of your business, is you need to have those baseline checkboxes ticked, which is consistent advertising and exposure, a brand that's in front of people wherever they're looking for work across all sorts of different websites. We're not naive. Nobody has one single favorite job search website that they use. People are going to look anywhere and everywhere if they're looking for work. So you need to be there consistently, have a solid employer brand, a good reputation on things like safety as well as culture, and then also have solid job branding. And so I think those practices, regardless of the ebb and flow of how the demand goes in the future, which I think will be reasonably sustained, is going to benefit you in terms of attracting this type of talent in the future.
And quite frankly, any type of talent. There's nothing you said there that I wouldn't apply to an engineer job, right? Like, so like, thumbs up, Rob, for good, solid, just overall tips. Monica, what would you add?
Obviously, I echo a lot of what Rob said about, I do believe behaviors are changing and are here to stay. And so I think this competition and the need for businesses to think about it will also sustain. So we come at it at a slightly different angle as a marketplace business. And so because we're a marketplace, there's an element of choice. And so when it comes from to a worker seeing a variety of options for a shift or a job to accept, there's that level of choice and optionality. And what we see is that in a time of high competition, which we do believe will be sustained, some of the baser elements that are always critically important, but sometimes ignored, will become that much more important. So you mentioned safety as one in the time of a pandemic, but what we see is really, it's pretty simple. It's not rocket science. Pay and workplace treatment and respect is very important, especially in the temp staffing realm. So the higher the competition, the more competitive pay and fair pay is going to come into the conversation. And we're seeing a really positive change that we not only hope to sustain, but intend to help sustain through initiatives and programs within Wonolo, such as focusing on a living wage rather than benchmarking around a minimum wage. And then secondly, just workplace treatment, as something as simple as that. How someone is treated and respected on the job is the difference between accepting the job for one day and leaving and starting all over again, and staying for the long haul of an assignment. I really think that's two very simple pieces of advice I would give to any job that we see from the marketplace side.
I think that that's amazing and really actionable takeaways just for anybody in any industry, but particularly here and in entry-level roles where the opportunities tend to ebb and flow, and in this case, everything that we've talked about is really about alignment of the expectations with the actual reality, right? I would be a horrible warehouse worker, and I should be able to tell that from your job description and the options and the app and all of those things. So just being really job seeker first, I think, Monica, maybe it would be like my and yes, girl, to your comments. So excellent. Well, so I thank you. And I think Rob had some technical difficulties and dropped off, but we thank him virtually when he watches this back. And again, for any of our listeners, a couple of things that I would just add: if you haven't already downloaded the white paper in the description below and you hire warehouse workers, this is real actionable data that talks about the increase in inventory and the increase in costs to fill those roles just in our current environment, and really something that you can take back and take away with you. So Monica, again, thank you to you and Wonolo for doing such a fabulous job, and our partners for the data. It was a pleasure having you, and I would love to have you again.